Even before your baby is born. 60 Minutes, tonight.
Day 2 of the Tour de Pont and the start of the 57-mile road race between Dover and Wilmington, Delaware. A nasty nor'easter pelted the Delaware coast with several inches of rain, but the Tour de Pont went on. Racers greased their legs with liniment to ward off the cold, and some rode 50 feet to warm up instead of 50 minutes. For race-leading superstar Greg LeMond, the weather meant fewer pre-race obligations, but persistent fans can find him anywhere. Frenchman Laurent Fignon didn't seem bothered by the downpour, but teammate Gianni Bugnol's expression seemed to say, "This is not what I had in mind." The pack set off to face the 57 miles with thoughts of self-survival more than attacking one another in the treacherous conditions. A mile and a half from Wilmington, by prior agreement, tour officials tried to stop the race to allow the pack to safely cross the last of 3 steel bridges. After a momentary slowdown, the field of over 100 riders restarted somewhat gingerly. And so the racers tiptoed and soft-pedaled across the bridge and into the safety of Wilmington, where Greg LeMond kept the overall lead and looked forward to that evening's time trial.
Tonight is going to be the real deciding point to see how good I really am, because Prolog's one test, but 25 kilometers is a little bit different test.
4 hours later, the weather was the same, and these visitors from Italy wondered if they picked a bum week for their trip to the States. One rider used initiative to find a dry spot to loosen tight legs.
Oh my God!
That was English. And that was French. No problem for a man living on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yes, Greg, you do, just like Australian Phil Anderson, who, because of a mechanical problem in the prologue time trial over 3 miles, started unusually amongst the early departures in this 16 miles test. Anderson's pride is hurt, and in atrocious conditions he forces the pace over a difficult course. It's a course full of pitfalls, like slippery corners and railway tracks. At the finish line, the list of starters and perhaps Anderson's times en route are being checked by none other than Laurent Fignon. Anderson, his speed unrelenting, had passed 5 riders on his way around the course, definitely not for the nervous. As he returned to downtown Wilmington, all that remained was to see his time. 36 minutes and 22 seconds, the best so far. The gauntlet was down.
How would Greg LeMond answer the challenge? We'll find out when we return.
Unlike the weather, Laurent Fignon has warmed to the Tour du Pont, and with Phil Anderson's time as a target in the 16 miles time trial, he searches for the speed that will recover for him the 21 seconds he's lost since last Thursday's start. Gianni Bugnol, the world champion, out of the start house in Wilmington for his lap of a rain-drenched countryside. He's 17 seconds behind the leader, Greg LeMond, while Fignon, a Frenchman on the Italian's team, dances in the rain. 8 years ago, without a doubt, this race he would have won. Last to start, the leader, Greg LeMond. Time will soon reveal all. Bugnol picked his way around the tortuous route, a route as challenging as any he has faced in the world. Behind him, and only 7 minutes into his ride, LeMond was off his bike, stopped by a flat. Once again, the American was forced from the attack to the defense. As the wheel was changed, LeMond faced a loss of at least 20 seconds. to those who search for his yellow jersey. Unaware of LeMond's difficulties, Fignon runs towards the finish. The clock shows Anderson's time had not been beaten.
2-second best time for Fignon. 2-second best time. 36 minutes.
Driven by frustration, even anger over his misfortune, LeMond suffered like a wounded animal, hoping to salvage his yellow jersey on a day everyone and everything seemed against him. When you arrived, his time hardly causing a ripple, he failed to pierce the top 20. And LeMond, in his own lonely world, had found the adrenaline ceasing to surge as he battled to find a rhythm that would carry him to his goal. From a surprise quarter, it was Englishman Dave Mann riding on the American Coors Light team who delivered the shock result. He finished with 35 minutes 28 seconds, the new best time. Visibly, LeMond slowed. His strength ebbed in the dreariness of the evening. The finish was not coming quick enough. And at the finish, another Coors Light rider, Stephen Schwartz, set a new second best time. At last, LeMond reached home, and despite his flat, he'd arrived third best on the night. Now time would tell if it had been enough to keep his lead.
Keep going, keep going.
So LeMond lost the time trial by 24 seconds, just about the time it took to change his flat tire. And he lost, too, his race lead to Dave Mann of Coors Light, while Anderson rose from 96th to 20th overall. After 2 days, the Tour DuPont had a new leader, but Greg LeMond didn't seem to mind.
Thank you, Jamie Murray.
I was a little nervous after I flatted, and I tried to make up a little time and ended up really hurting myself towards the end of the race. But I still had a good time trial, and I'm in an ideal position, no pressure, still 10 days to go, and I'm still within attacking range, so I'm not worried at all.
LeMond may need to be worried next week as the Tour enters its fourth state, Virginia, for 3 rugged days in the Allegheny Mountains. On day 8, the Tour will crest 3 peaks of more than 2,600 feet on the way along the Blue Ridge from Harrisonburg to the Homestead Resort in Hot Springs. The Tour's toughest leg should be day 9, 98 miles from the Homestead to Wintergreen. The second and third climbs are the steepest of the race. Last year, Greg LeMond's teammate Otley Vosval seized the overall lead here by out-climbing the field, which he kept until the Tour's final day. Then it's east on a rolling course to Richmond, where a circuit race follows on the Tour's next-to-last day. The entourage moves on to Washington, D.C. for a final time trial that will determine the winner. The 16-mile loop passes landmarks like the Lincoln Memorial and Washington Monument, with the start and finish just outside RFK Stadium. The winner gets $50,000 of a $200,000 purse. Plenty of incentive for the 105 competitors to attack the nearly 1,000-mile course that runs through 4 states in the event known as the Tour DuPont. And today, of course, is Mother's Day. After a pre-race greeting, the pack offered its floral gift to Central Pennsylvania. Just outside the finished city of Hershey, world champion Gianni Bugno flatted, but a quick wheel change from his team vehicle and Bugno made it back to the safety of the pack. German Rolf Aldag of the Helvetia team won the sprint. Dave Mann of Coors Light remains in the overall lead. Greg LeMond is still third, just 12 seconds back. So join us next week on CBS Sports Sunday for the conclusion of the Tour DuPont. Coming up next, final round coverage of the Bell South Classic. So for Jim Gray and Phil Liggett, I'm James Brown saying so long from the Tour DuPont.
CBS Sports Sunday is sponsored by the Virginia
Delaware. It was there where Greg LeMond made a dream start to the 11-day race, and the first yellow jersey of the Tour DuPont was his. Then came the rain, and how, and in Wilmington Friday, LeMond had lost his lead. And the reason? By virtue of a flat back tyre which cost him 20 seconds. That put the Coors Light mates Dave Mann and Stephen Swart at the top. Mann was in yellow by less than a second. On Saturday, Russian star Dmitry Nelyubin tried to escape, but it was all to no avail. And in the big sprint finish, it was the German amateur Uwe Preisler who led the field home. But Dave Mann kept his yellow jersey of leadership. Today, the race will leave Pennsylvania and it will head for Maryland. The historic statue of Milton S. Hershey, who returned to the cornfields of his birthplace at the turn of the century. It's a town famous for its chocolate and its famous Hershey bar. And after the rain so far, today, the sun reflects on Dave Mann's leader's yellow jersey. Will he defend it successfully as we head down towards Hagerstown? Hi everybody, I'm Phil Liggett and welcome to day 5 of the Tour du Pont. It rolls now on its 1,000-mile road to Washington, D.C., where it will end on May the 17th. Stay with us, the same-day coverage here on ESPN. Well, Brian, you said to me the other day in Wilmington when it was raining, that was typically British weather. Now we've got a British rider in the lead.
Well, indeed, and things couldn't be any tighter at the top of the standings. David Mann is leading his New Zealand teammate Stephen Swart by just 74 hundredths of a second. Doesn't get any tighter than that. But you know, Phil, further down the standings, riders, and some of them quite famous, are beginning to lose large chunks of time sacrificing themselves for their teammates, specifically Davis Finney and riders like Dmitry Nelyubin. But with the real mountains looming ahead, that situation isn't going to get any better.
Okay, well, we'll see how Dave Mann gets on later today, because we are now at the start of day 5 here at the Chocolate World in Hershey in Pennsylvania. By the end of the day, this tour will be down in Maryland at Hagerstown. But first of all, let's have a look back at the weekend and see just how Dave Mann took that race leader's yellow jersey. And so the riders make it ready for their start. When we go back to stage 4, 142 miles in Stroudsburg to Hershey in the Pocono Mountains. It was a tough day. And the big problem was the Blue Mountain, which came after 124 miles in the saddle. And we can have a look at that now. It comes, in fact, just 18 miles from the finish. There it is. And that could be the deciding factor.
For David Mann, who is one of the strong men, the strong man of Coors Light, climbing is not his strong suit. So the mountains that loom ahead are a problem for this big man who is their motor on the straightaway. The team strategy, they say they will protect the yellow jersey as long as they can. Coors Light will be constantly at the front trying to keep other teams from getting away. For Team USA, the young Skittles U.S. team, they have good mountain men like Bobby Julich, who was 5th in last year's race. And for them, well, they're just looking for an opening to try to get one of their superstars, Julich or Lance Armstrong, All-American, out in front.
And still America remembers and talks regularly about Greg LeMond, the rider who started this race so well when he won the opening prologue. It's fair to say, too, the puncture a day later took the yellow jersey off his shoulders. Now he lies in 3rd place, just 12 seconds behind Dave Mann and Stephen Swart. And there's Phil Anderson, 1 minute 28 seconds behind in 18th place overall. Phil Anderson had terrible bad luck in the opening prologue time trial. And what about Dag Otto Rodsen? He won the first race here 4 years ago. He's back in this race in a big way. He's 43 seconds down on the race lead and in 5th place.
Laurent Fignon and Gianni Bugno, both of the Gatorade team, well, they're trying to move up the standings from where they sit. Fignon in 10th place, down just over a minute. Gianni Bugno not having such a good time of it. They are a strong team and yet to be heard from. But Team Z, it's not just Greg LeMond. It's 2-time runner-up in this event, Atle Kvalsvoll. He's waiting for the mountains that lie ahead.
So Kvalsvoll lies in 9th place, but let's go now to the start line. It's a long way, Brian, 142 miles, but thankfully the weather has turned for the better.
Well, it's turned for the better, but it's gotten warmer. This is the longest yet stage in the 1992 Tour du Pont. And the fact that these riders have the most of the 1,000 miles yet to ride is certainly going to prey on their minds. They'll not want to rush into something that's going to take them well over 5 hours in the saddle.
And this race still has 1 week to run to Washington, D.C. That's a long way off. And let's remember the 1992 Tour DuPont is being brought to you by DuPont, by Powerbar, fuel for optimum performance, and by the state of Virginia. So as the riders now roll out, heading on the longest stage so far of this year's Tour DuPont, will they get Dave Mann's yellow jersey off his shoulders? We'll be back as we continue. Welcome back to the Tour DuPont. We're looking back to yesterday's long stage, taking us down to the other end into Maryland, into Hagerstown, into Hershey. Now look at this, Brian. The Coors Light boys are going to try and control this race today. They surely are going to do that.
Well, that's certainly their job. They have the man in the yellow jersey. They're going to go to the front, make sure that they stay there so that they can see anything coming by. And if something comes by, they're going to chase it down and bring it back.
Well, the pack staying together in these early stages, which isn't too surprising. On the route, they've got 1 or 2 sprints in the towns, but basically the challenge will come towards the end of the long ride.
It's a little cool at the start, and some of the riders still wearing their long sleeves, but as the action heats up, they'll start shedding those arm warmers and getting into it. Roy Nickman going after one of those early breakaways as the IME Bola team tries to make something happen early on.
And then an attack by Bobby Julich, which came at 35 miles to the finish. He held a lead of just 35 seconds. The American amateurs said, almost told us, they were going to do this very attack on this day.
Dave Mann, of Coors Light, the strong man, can't necessarily leave it up to his teammates to do the chasing, so he's right there along with Laurent Fignon, Greg LeMond just in the background. Darren Baker of the USA Skittles team, who lives in nearby Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, that's just outside the finish line area. There's Steven Swart, who sits in second place behind his yellow jersey roommate, and Mike Engelman, the strongest climber of the team, the man on the front. Oh, that's David Farmer, the recent addition to the team, who's on the front of the field. Nevertheless, Coors Light and now Motorola joining them there. But it's Bobby Julich who's out in front just as he approaches the top of the climb in this race coming near the end.
Well, he broke clear at 107 miles yesterday, and the pack closing in on him now as he starts the climb of the Blue Mountain. And not surprisingly either, it's the Coors Light boys who are doing their duty for Dave Mann and closing down this event with Dagotta Lauritsen in the blue Motorola jersey there, sitting at the front, taking the tempo and watching the moves that come.
And with 19 miles to go in the race and before the top of the mountain, young Bobby Julich is reabsorbed by the pack.
But if you don't try, Brian, you don't win bike races of this nature. Now we go towards the top of the hill, and the King of the Mountains leader, Tidi Claverola from France, going well clear. He's used to winning these titles all around the world, and he's here now to try and make this title his by the time we get down to Washington. Second place over the hill there was Mike Engelman. We go back out to the front now, and Jerome Simon from Greg LeMond's Z team has now tried his move.
10 years as a professional, but mostly in assistance of Greg LeMond. He is testing the waters for the Z team, and he's chased down by those from Gatorade.
Interestingly to note, too, that the Gatorade team are trying to bring this race back together as once more the attacks get underway.
And it's the Skittles USA amateur team with Laurent Fignon on the wheel. That's got to be a heart-stopping experience for a young U.S. amateur rider to turn around and see a 2-time Tour de France champion on his wheels.
Now, Dave Mann, the yellow jersey, and this race coming to its close now in Hershey, and he's still very much in control so far. Dagotta Lauritsen, Atle Volsvold. These are the names we're going to see now as this race goes towards Washington, and none other than Greg LeMond lying in third overall. Well, the amateurs are here too, you know, and the United States have a strong team, and let's have a look at one of them, Lance Armstrong. Big things expected of him at the Olympic Games this year, and Phil Anderson, who has been the Commonwealth Games champion before he was professional. Now, what's happened here, Brian? A puncture to Gianni Bugno.
And Gianni Bugno in the last 4 or 5 kilometers to the finish can't afford to be off the back like this. He's changed a bike rather than a wheel, and he's attacking, trying to get back into the bunch without losing any time at this critical point in the stage.
So Bugno returned safely to the pack, but he'd never made any impression on the big sprint towards the finish, and it was the sprinter from Germany, the professional member of the Helvetia team this time, Rolf Aldag, who won 2 stages of this race last year, who battled his way towards the front. The long, thin line at the back, but the sprinters elbow to elbow at the front, giving the crowd in Hershey a grandstand finish. Aldag for Helvetia is now heading the charge, being chased by Peter Hilser from the Seyur team and Tom Craven from the Chevrolet team. And it was interesting to note, too, that the LA Sheriff Chevrolet team again was providing us with the best American finisher.
Only Germans have won field sprints thus far in the Tour DuPont. Rolf Aldag continuing that trend with the first place on this stage 4.
And it was Uwe Preisler who won already. He's in 4th place this time. No change in the overall standings. The yellow jersey stays with Dave Mann by just 0.74 of a second. And we can see that right here. Steven Schwartz, his teammate, still in 2nd place. Greg LeMond still in 3rd. Frankie Andreu is 4th. But the sprint leader, Rolf Aldag, the mountain leader, Thierry Claverola. Although Dave Mann looked particularly strong on the road into Hershey yesterday, they're all saying, Brian, on his team that he may not win the race.
Well, Dave Mann is admittedly the strongest one on the team, and so not only is he in the race leader jersey and could benefit from the work of his teammates, because he is the strong man, he's going out there and having to defend it himself. But you're right, they concede that perhaps someone else on their team is the one they're looking at towards the end of this race.
And what about riders like Greg LeMond, Brian? Are they going to challenge today, do you think?
Well, I don't know about today, but certainly because they're just lurking. Greg LeMond only 12 seconds out of the lead. They have to be looking over their shoulders, the 2 race leaders, and everyone behind him looking ahead to see if Greg LeMond isn't going to make a move somewhere along the line this race.
Well, when we come back, we'll find out whether Dave Mann keeps his lead in today's Tour DuPont.